you for giving me an opportunity to speak to you all. About 40 years ago, I met my future wife in an art class in New York City. She had come from Calcutta to accompany her parents because her brother was receiving medical treatment in New York. She returned to India. I thought it over. I proposed to her over the summer. And nearly 2 years later, she managed to elope to America to join me, by which time I had left New York City where we met, and I had gotten a job teaching philosophy in Little Athens, Georgia, at the University of Georgia. Now, when she married me, she insisted that every year we would return to India for the summer. And since I'm an academic and I don't teach during the summer, and I can carry my writing with me wherever, we could do that. So I have benefited from having a foot in two worlds and living in India every year, part of the year, not as a Ferengi, not as a tourist, but as a son-in-law. Now I know how hard to leave themselves and come to a new country and make their life there. You leave behind family, friends, a whole world with which you're familiar. But you also gain a gift of insight because you know two worlds very intimately. And that allows you to question what is going on in both of them and to think more deeply about where we should be going, what kind of life we should lead. Now I think I can say safely, everyone here has roots in the two largest democracies in human history, that of the United States and that of India. In both of our democracies, we are facing great challenges that in the coming years are going to decide the fate of whether we will retain and enhance our freedom or lose what we have. One of the challenges we face both in India and in the United States is the growth of increasing inequality of wealth. You see that if you were to return to Mumbai after many years and you see an explosion of high-rise buildings in which the very wealthy are living. You see the same thing in Manhattan if you go to 57th Street, where my wife and I once attended art classes at the Art Students League, and you'll see what's now being called the street of billionaires. Well, the huge explosion of wealth is being concentrated at the top. More and more people in both India and the United States are living on the edge. The political equality of a democracy is in jeopardy if we allow social inequality to grow without limit. Another challenge we face is the rise of an anti-democratic nationalism. True patriotism, a democratic patriotism, is one where one loves one's country because it upholds the rights of all groups, of all religions, of all ethnicities. An anti-democratic nationalism wants to make one particular group identity supreme and put the rights of all other groups, all other religions in jeopardy, and demonize immigrants. Well, a third challenge to democracy that we are facing, both in India and the United States, is the tremendous growth of the destruction of our environment and the climate emergency that we are entering. My daughter is right now in Kochi, attending a wedding of a friend. She made her way there in a very circuitous route that makes me worry about Santa Claus. She went first to Alaska to go off with a friend into the wilds, expecting in this dead of winter to meet freezing cold, snow and ice, but instead the weather was balmy. It was raining, it was foggy. Well, eventually she made her way to Calcutta. I turned on my weather app, and it said that Calcutta had extremely hazardous air quality. And the figure for the air particle count was even higher than that of Delhi, which usually is the world leader. Now, I know from having been in Delhi in winter that in winter there's a degree of pollution that is really suffocating and dangerous. Schools are closed, traffic is shut down, etc. And I also know that in the weeks before the monsoon, the heat is becoming more and more oppressive, so that in some parts of India, and in many more parts of India than the past, you put your life at risk if you do not have access to air conditioning or shade. And we all know that the glaciers in the Himalayas are melting at an accelerating rate. All the great rivers of Asia, of South Asia and Southeast Asia, depend upon their sources in the glaciers of the Himalayas. What we are witnessing is an impending catastrophe that will affect as much as 2 billion people who will face water shortages, the like of which we have never experienced. Now, who are our leaders in face of these challenges to our democracy? Well, you might even wonder whether there's much difference. Donald Trump seems to be the American Modi. Modi appears to be the American Trump. For their avid supporters, no matter what they do, they can do no wrong. For their detractors, their promises of producing new jobs are regarded as a screen for efforts to take the reins off business, enhance the position of the wealthy, and increase the wealth inequality that undermines our democracy. For their detractors, they are both advancing an anti-democratic nationalism that is a threat to the rights of minorities and immigrants. To their detractors, they are both pushing ahead exploration and expanded production and consumption of fossil fuels instead of dealing with the climate crisis we are facing. Well, where are we to go? Well, I want to point to an inspiration we can find if we look at a comparison of the Indian Constitution with the United States Constitution. The United States Constitution is the oldest constitution in use, and today, the oldest, but it's also the shortest. The Indian Constitution is the longest in the world. In 1947, B.R. Ambedkar came together with a group of legal experts and to draw up a constitution for what would be the largest democracy in human history. They knew the United States Constitution was incomplete, and they put in the Indian Constitution what amounts to a social bill of rights, where they recognize that we need to constitutionally guarantee the right to a job at a decent wage, the right to decent housing, the right to health care, the right to food and clothing, the right to legal representation, the right to education at all levels. None of this is guaranteed in the United States Constitution. It is all guaranteed in the Indian Constitution, but I think we all know that it is not fully implemented. Well, I am going to be running for the US Senate starting this January. And I am going to be drawing my inspiration on the social bill of rights that is to be found in the Indian Constitution, and I'm going to be pushing a bold social bill of rights platform. You'll hear more about it in the weeks to come. I hope that it will gain your support. 2020 is a very fateful election for the United States, and we're not alone in the world. What happens here will have an impact everywhere, and particularly in India. So thank you for your